You went weird just now.
I'm just watching the movie.
Nobody's watching the movie. I'm 26, and Kian and I have been friends since we were 21, which means we have roughly 5 years of accumulated shorthand. The kind where you stop explaining yourself because the other person already knows what you meant before you finish the sentence. We lived near each other for most of that, and then in the same apartment building for about a year, which sounds more dramatic than it was. We just both happened to be looking at the same time. That's actually a pretty good summary of the whole friendship, if I think about it. About a month before the night I'm actually trying to tell you about, he started hanging out with a new group, colleagues of a colleague, the kind of connection that's hard to trace back to a single point. They had a specific energy that I noticed immediately, which is that they were never quite at rest. They showed up to his place already, mid-conversation, already performing, already referencing things that had happened somewhere else. Kian adjusted quickly. That was the thing I kept noticing, how quickly he found a register for them, a version of himself that was louder and more performing. It wasn't fake, exactly. It just wasn't the one I'd been calibrated to.
So how long have you two been a thing?
We're not.
Right.
I mean, we've just known each other for a while.
Yeah, no, I get it.
There were small things I noticed and didn't examine. One of his new friends, Petra, I think, though I might be misremembering, asked me something at one of these group nights. Something like, "So, how long have you two been a thing?" And I said we weren't, and she said, "Right," in a way that had a shape to it, like she already knew more about this than I did. Another time I walked in and interrupted something that stopped when I came through the door. Not dramatically, just the way conversations do when a new person enters and there's a small recalibration. I noticed it the same way you notice that someone's haircut looks different, but you can't name what changed.
You want anything? They ordered like 3 different things.
I'm fine for now.
There's definitely too much of the noodle one.
Maybe later.
Okay? But I'm not saving you any.
The specific Friday I'm thinking about was late October, I think, or early November. The kind of evening where you don't expect to be cold, and then you are. 3 of his new friends were there, and the TV was on the same as always, and someone had ordered food that was sitting in containers on the coffee table. At some point, the conversation moved to something I wasn't part of, and I got quiet the way I do. And without really deciding to, I leaned my head on his shoulder the way I had maybe 100 times before. Because there was a movie on that no one was watching, and it was that kind of night, and that was just what that felt like. You went weird just now.
I'm just watching the movie.
Nobody's watching the movie. I felt him go still under me. That's the thing about that position, where your head is resting on someone's shoulder. You feel their breathing before you see their face, so there's always half a second where you don't know yet. I had that half second, and it felt the same as every other time. And then he shifted very slightly, and one of his friends said something like, "Look at you too," in a joking way. And Kian laughed, and he said, "She does this. She's kind of a creep about personal space," and they all laughed, and I sat up.
You good?
Yeah, just tired.
There's still food if you want.
Is there any of the other one left?
Should be. Check the second container.
I didn't say anything. I picked up my phone and looked at something on it, and then I asked if there was any food left, and someone said yes, and I got some. I stayed for another 40 minutes, because leaving right then would have required explaining something I didn't want to explain. And then I said I was tired from the week, and I left. And he said, "Text me when you're home," the same way he always did. I texted him when I got home. He replied with a thumbs up. About a week later, our mutual friend Sarah sent me a screenshot, without any context except, "Did you know about this?" And it was a message he'd sent to someone in that new group. A few sentences saying that things with me had been getting a little weird lately, that he'd been feeling uncomfortable for a while, that some of my behaviour was starting to feel like it was crossing a line. The timestamp on the message was about 30 minutes after I'd left that night. I know that because I checked my texted when home message and did the math, and the numbers lined up in a way that was very specific. Sarah said she hadn't been there. She only knew what the screenshot said, and I believed her. She didn't have a read on it that was any better than mine. We've texted a few times since. He asked how I was, and I said fine, and asked how he was, and he said busy. I don't know which part I kept coming back to. Whether it was the word creep. which he'd used out loud to a room full of people and which I'd heard with my own ears, or whether it was the "for a while," which implied a timeline I hadn't been given access to, or whether it was the 30 minutes, which kept feeling like a detail I couldn't put down correctly. There's probably a group chat somewhere that has a version of me in it that I haven't read. I still have the screenshot open on my phone,